Hey there again, y'all. And today I kind of wanted to expand on a kind of older video talking about morality and whether or not it is a social construct, because I wanted to kind of get this off my chest, basically, about, the differences between moral nihilism and I guess moral relativism. I know I kind of, in earlier videos, I kind of made this sort of assumption that I was basically a moral nihilist, which is not 100% accurate. I would probably fall more into the moral relativist category for a number of reasons. But yeah, anyway, long story short, I kind of want to do kind of a comparing and contrasting video on moral nihilism and moral relativism, basically. I did kind of make the implication that morality in and of itself is a social construct, which can be very, I think it can be very, questionable. I would say kind of, from two different perspectives. Yeah, I guess you can say I am both a moral nihilist and a moral relativist. I would say kind of from a sort of, philosophical or kind of evolutionary standpoint, yeah, I do think morality in and of itself is entirely a social construct, and it kind of stems from three basic components, that being, religion, superstition, and culture. So I kind of want to go into detail about that, what I mean by how morality is kind of derived from those three main components. I know religion has a lot to do with this kind of diluted concept of morality. I know, if you go any religion, it doesn't matter, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, maybe even some of the Eastern religions to a lesser extent, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, etc. Yeah, you can kind of see the kind of similarities between all those kind of religions or philosophies or what have you. I know, I think every religion kind of revolves around this sort of, what I like to say, or what I called in my video regarding morality, in the idea that morality is a social construct. I kind of made the point about the golden rule. The golden rule is basically a universal understanding of treating others the way you should be treated. And you can see that in virtually all religions to some extent or another. So yeah, I kind of dive into that. I know religion's kind of the main, I would say overall the main component to this, I guess, concept of morality. But on the other hand, you have superstition, and I'm kind of going to give you kind of a bizarre example about how superstition plays a role into this, idea of morality. This is kind of the old caveman analogy. Let's say there's a caveman that existed, 100,000 years ago. Anyway, so this caveman, he discovers masturbation for the first time. And then, the next day there's a thunderstorm, and the conclusion he comes to is, well, this this act led to this act, basically. And that kind of, you can make an argument that, how certain religions would kind of pick up on that notion and stuff like that. So, I know, oddly specific example there. So there's that, basically the aspect of superstition, essentially. But I think in terms of culture, I think that kind of gives you a much more broad sense of this idea of morality in and of itself. I think culture does kind of encompass all, aspects of philosophy, whether it's, religion, superstition, identity politics, or what have you. So yeah, I think culture does kind of just make this more, I think it paints a much broader picture, essentially, in terms of morality. So yeah, there you go. We got religion, superstition, and culture. And with culture, I know it's really in this kind of goes all the way back to the prehistoric era. People live accordingly by certain societal norms or societal mores, and that stems from anywhere from what we eat to who we're, I guess, supposed to marry, who we're supposed to, have kids with, or who we're supposed to, I guess, associate with in terms of, platonic friendships, the kind of clothes we wear, kind of just our day-to-day lives, honestly. So yeah, there's that idea of certain, cultural boundaries, and that kind of, and that exists largely due to religion and superstition, but there is also various other elements associated with that. So yeah, boom, there's that, I guess, concept, the idea that morality in and of itself is really derived from those three main components, religion, superstition, and culture. So that's kind of where, people would say, saying that being said, morality is in fact a social construct. So I kind of want to turn more to basically the idea of moral relativism. Now, moral relativism is more about questioning morality, not necessarily rejecting the concept of morality. And like I said, time and time again, I do abide by that golden rule, treat others the way you wish to be treated. So yeah, anyway, moral relativism, I want to kind of dive more into that. I think it is very natural for us to question, morality, not just for what it is, but for why it is. I know there's one example I can think of is this idea of censorship in the United States. We have a tendency to censor nudity more than we censor, violence. And this kind of came to mind years and years ago when I was a little kid. I was about maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere in that range. I was watching a horror movie at a friend's house. So keep in mind, I'm 8, 9, 10 years old, and I guess my friend's parents were A-okay with us watching, R-rated horror movies, people getting brutally stabbed or their heads whacked off or whatever. So yeah, there is one scene in this movie, I forgot, this is years ago, I think it might have been one of the Chucky movies or whatever, Child's Play, whatever. Anyway, there's one scene, I guess, where there was I'm going to say just a regular nude scene. There was no sex involved, but it was just kind of a scene where you see a woman walking inside the room topless, and I guess my my friend's mom kind of, I guess, didn't like that as much. She was okay with the violence, but as soon as the nudity, hit the screen, there was that kind of like, oh shit, time out. We can't be exposing you to this kind of imagery. So yeah, I think honestly, in some ways, I guess you could say that is a kind of generational thing, despite one's, basic religious or cultural background. I think it does kind of stem from this sort of, 1950s Leave It to Beaverland kind of mentality that we were so, or not our generation, my generation, but the kind of older generation from that era, from that kind of, pre-sexual revolution era. We kind of have this sort of, mindset of, what's kind of socially acceptable, what isn't, in terms of what we should be focusing on censoring, basically. And I'm aware that in other countries, especially in Europe, it's kind of the other way around. In most European countries, violence is more heavily censored than nudity. So, there's that kind of angle to that. There is this sort of, I guess, puritanical background we have in this country, which you don't see as much in, other countries. You say, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, etc. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of largely a matter of nationality, what kind of, country we were brought into. So yeah, there's that kind of example. I was, like I said, I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I was kind of thinking about that. I was thinking about why, you know, it's okay for a younger kid to view violence, but not so much nudity. I've always kind of questioned that societal norm. So yeah, that's one broad example I can think of. I can think of many others. I can say that when someone questions morality for why it is, as well as for what it is, I think we can kind of open, kind of a different kind of way of thinking. Like I said, a lot of it is a generational thing. I think in my generation and future generations, I think we're going to have a more basic, more, I guess, tolerant understanding of not just nudity, but a lot of other social taboos like homosexuality, prostitution, drugs, etc. But yeah, I want to kind of just end on this note. Yeah, I think in terms of morality, I would say I lean more toward moral relativism. That being said, yeah, I think morality in and of itself can be described as a social construct. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think, like I said, I just honestly, I abide by the golden rule, and I think that should be really what the legal system should be based on. I don't think the legal system should be based on on morality entirely. I think it is more about what I like to think of. I think it's more about practicality over morality. For instance, I think it is practical to set laws or boundaries regarding murder because obviously nobody wants to be murdered. Same thing goes with rape. Nobody wants to be raped. Same thing goes with robbery. Nobody wants to be robbed. The list goes on and on. But yeah, overall, yeah, I think the golden rule essentially is the best way to kind of describe my views on morality even from a moral relativist point of view. So yeah, that pretty much sums that up. So yeah, if you had any questions or comments regarding this particular topic or what have you, let me know. And yeah, I will catch you all next time. All right, you have a good one. Ciao.